I guess it was Does anybody mind if we don't keep this on? Thank you. Now I can actually. Many of you attended the session we had in January about the summer, but hopefully you understood then that we only offer a few clinics during the summer, and what we're going to inform you about today is the full range of opportunities that will be available to you starting in the fall. And of course, since I'm sure most of you are first-year students, that will be available to you for the balance of your time here for the law school. So you'll be able to not only think in the immediate future, but in the long term as well. So we're going to give you what I hope will be your first taste of what it's like not to be a first-year student anymore, and to have something to look forward to for next year and thereafter. As you can tell from just the sheer number of people seated here, we have a huge number of clinical offerings of enormous variety. And what we basically do today is everybody will speak very briefly about their individual programs. And then I hope all of you have seen that papered around the law school, and it's on the web page, the schedule of small group individual clinic meetings that are going to be held between now and the application due date, which is on April 23rd. So I'll talk to you just a little bit about sort of the general process, and then we'll go into the individual presentation. And I encourage you, by the way, in terms of the individual sessions, to attend as many as you possibly can. Some of them are scheduled at the same time. Feel free to walk in and out. It's not a formal presentation. It's really more of a question and answer for your benefit. So it's perfectly fine, and I don't think you're rude if you walk in later or walk out early. First, I just wanted to say generally about the format of today. We'll each talk, and then if you have questions of sort of a general nature, about applications, about credits, about things that everybody in the audience might like to know the answer to, we won't adjourn until you've had a chance to ask those questions. And then if you have specific questions for the individual people here, we'll hang around. But also, I'd encourage you to find the answers to those questions by going to one of those small meetings, or you'll be able to contact any of us by email or phone if you want. I'm really happy to say that we are now completely electronic. We used to come to these meetings with cartons and cartons full of written materials which we distribute, and in every June I get a phone call saying, how can you spend $4 million on Xeroxing on your account? I'm glad to say we don't have to do that anymore. As of whenever it was that the web page went up, most and very soon all of the information that you'll need about clinics will be available on the web. Let me alert you to a few things that are available, and you can run out and look for them now. I was urged to do a electronic demonstration today, but it's well beyond my ability, so I give it to you all to figure it out for yourself. If you go to academic programs and then clinics, you'll see a series of choices, including something called the Clinical Education Guide. That's about a 40-page, when it's printed out, manual that gives you answers to anything you want to know. It describes the programs, it talks about application procedures, it talks about credits and requirements and everything else, who teaches what, when the clinics are offered. I'm going to urge you all to take a look at that, particularly because if it's in writing, it would be really helpful if you educate yourself about it before you start asking questions, because as you can imagine, if everybody asks a question, it's a lot of questions to have to field, and we try very hard to put the answers to what we anticipate to be most of your questions in writing for you to look at. In addition, information about applications and the application forms themselves are all under the heading Applications. There's also, at this point, a whole listing of contact information. If you just click onto any name, you'll be automatically sent into an email, and so if you want to email a question about a clinic, do it that way. There are announcements. So, for example, and this schedule is on it too, so if any of you didn't see it lying around, feel free to click onto that. The applications can be downloaded, but they can't be completed online. When you apply, you will apply with an application form plus a resume, a writing sample, and an unofficial grade report. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to the register and get an official transcript or anything like that. The application, even though we've gone electronic on the output, the input is still by hand, and you have to drop them off at the clinic office. There'll be a box designated for that. And usually what you will do at that time is, not every clinic does it exactly the same way, but there usually are sign-up sheets to sign up for interviews. And the only interviews that you should sign up for are the interviews for your first choice. Don't sign up, even if you indicate on the form, you have 3 choices. Only have an interview for your first choice. Not every clinic has interviews the same way, so you'll just see the ones that want you to sign up. If that's your first choice, if one of those is your first choice, fill it out and just come back to the clinic office for your interview. In addition, there are some more detailed information resources online. The Civil Clinic has a manual that tells you everything about the clinic. It also tells you about the new application procedures that have just gone into place for the Civil Clinic, which Professor Eyster will talk about a little bit, and she'll also talk about in greater detail at her information session. And we have a handout for it in canary yellow, but they're a little different than they were in the past, so you should inform yourselves about that as well. Before we move into the presentation, I just wanted to, because some of you this may be new to most of you, and even though some of you may have applied for clinics for the summer, there are so many others available. Just want to sort of inform you a little bit about the breakdown of what clinics are. I mean, this is probably nothing new to most of you. Many of you have had opportunities in the past to work as part of your education and to do practical work. Clinical education isn't just about where to go to file the papers or how to write something or how to draft a pleading. Basically, there are 2 types of clinical models, and it's part of your education here at the law school. It's not just a job. One model is what we call in-house clinics, which is a model where, by and large, the students have a responsibility for representing the client. You assume the role of lawyer. We, of course, supervise you, and the supervision is intensive. It's conducted by members of the faculty, some of whom are part-time, some of whom are full-time, but all of our primary responsibilities to your education. Obviously, we have responsibility to the clients, but it's a shared responsibility. The other model is the extern clinic, which some of you may be doing or have already signed up for the summer, where you're basically interning in a law office, a judge's chamber, an agency, and you're working for somebody. They're the lawyers. They assign you tasks. Occasionally in those settings, you will be given actual job lawyers to do. You may get to argue something. You may get to interview a client. But the real responsibility for the task belongs to the office and the individual for whom you're working. So those are sort of the 2 models. What we are going to talk to you about today is all of those. But let me just indicate which are sort of the external models so that you can separate things out. We have basically a judicial placement clinic, a criminal placement clinic, and a civil clinic, which is everything that's not criminal and judicial for the most part. So, and those are the 3 primary clinics in which students are enrolled when they go out and they work in the field. All the other clinics, regardless of where the work is actually taking place, whether it's here at the law school or whether it's away from the law school, are basically clinics in which you are taking on the role of lawyer, in which you're going to be supervised by people who have a strong commitment, and they're hired to educate you, as opposed to lawyers in an office who, basically they're happy to teach you what they know, but they're not really responsible to Brooklyn Law School for your education. Okay, so the one other thing I wanted to point out to you, in case this is the kind of question that would occur, you can take pretty much as many semesters of a clinic as you want. Clinics have different amounts of credit. They're usually broken into 2 types of credit. What we call clinical credit, which reflects the field work, and academic or seminar credit, which reflects the class that is co-taught with the field work. So some clinics are 3, 4, 5 different credits. All of that is spelled out for you. But what it adds up to is there are lots of opportunities. You don't have to make one choice that's the only choice you'll ever have. There's not just one semester. You can do it repeatedly. People will fit in clinics with their schedules and other courses they have to take. There are some students who, having taken the clinic, can't imagine a semester without it. There are others who say, okay, I've finished, and so I've got that experience. It really will be up to you, your program, what fits. Now, you'll hear, when you hear from everybody, that there's something for everyone. So I'm going to turn over the floor. And hopefully the application, it speaks for itself, but there's blanks that you'll see, and we ask you to list clinics in order of your preference. I should warn you, actually, now that I think about it, that strategically, the in-house clinics tend to be oversubscribed. You know, more people apply than we have spaces. They range in size from 8 to about 20 students. So depending on how many people apply, not everybody may be taken. So if you put down 5 in-house clinics as your first choice, chances are you won't, we'll go down the list a little bit. You may not be considered for your 3rd or 4th choice, because by the time they get to you there, it will be filled up. So we generally advise people, if you're interested in an in-house clinic, to think strongly about which one you prefer and apply to that. You can certainly apply to other in-house clinics as 2nd or 3rd choice, but unless you really want to do an extern clinic more than anything else, if that's your first choice, fine. But usually it is the extern clinics have more capacity, more, there are many, many placements, more than hundreds of placements. So usually what students do is, if they want to do an in-house clinic, that would be, whichever one they pick, that'll be ahead of, in terms of your order of preference, the externship clinics, because those, they are more elastic and more accommodating to applications. Okay? All right, so let me start by introducing Professor Bechtel, Debbie Bechtel, who teaches the corporate real estate clinic.
I have 3 minutes. I'm Debbie Bechtel. I teach the corporate real estate clinic. I think it's about 4 years. It's 8 students working in teams of 2, and what we represent primarily are low-income co-ops throughout the city in all boroughs. We do represent some not-for-profit organizations as well, but it gives students an opportunity to represent a corporation. Usually they're business corporations operating a housing co-op. And usually it's a co-op that's getting a loan, or it may be initially when they're purchasing the building. We also do some work with boards of directors on annual meetings and bylaw amendments and other internal things that they may need. The students put in 10 hours a week, and there are a lot of phone calls, so it's important to be in the office during the day. So I have students choose hours, and they pretty much stick to those hours with their partner. So it's your choice, but once it's set, it's pretty set. And there's no required courses, corporations, and real estate practice are recommended. The main catch, for next year, I'm only going to take 3rd-year students in the fall and take some 2nd-year students in the spring. So that's a little different from the past, and it's because there's a waiting list build up. And just to give you an example of some of the projects, we represented Habitat for Humanity. This semester we did 11 house closings. The students represented the seller lender, which was Habitat, and prepared all the documents for those closings. And we also have, which may happen in the fall, we have 11 buildings on the Lower East Side that are city-owned buildings that are to be transferred to the residents. So we've been working with them to get them organized and ready to take title to their buildings and go forward with forming co-ops.
Hi, I'm Professor Hellerstein, and Dan Medwin and I run the Second Look program clinic. It's coming on the 2nd year of the clinic's existence. And it's a clinic that uses and offers students an opportunity to engage in the tracking of innocent people who have been wrongfully convicted, who have lost or exhausted all of their regular appellate and post-conviction remedies. And the work that students do, screening the cases, we've already had this year, it's close to 400 requests for assistance. I wouldn't want you to think that there are 400 people in our prison, all of whom are innocent. Of that, we have so far selected 5 cases. Those cases run the gamut in terms of what students do, from screening, legal research, in-field investigations, visiting inmates in prison, getting much more deeply in their cases. We have a very, very strict screening mechanism that the inmates or prisoners have to climb the hurdle to get us to the point where we believe it's the case that is truly one of actual innocence. We're not doing legal issues and we won't take cases that other lawyers are doing their appellate remedies for these folks, whether retained or assigned. It's really sort of like the last hope, the last gasp for people who claim and can persuade us that we can be of some assistance in establishing their innocence and moving for a new trial or to vacate their conviction by proving we've not newly discovered evidence. What it offers students is precisely that gamut of activity. What it doesn't offer students is really a chance to appear in court. The number of court appearances will be rare. They will usually be done by myself or by Dan. It's all in the investigation. We don't even require as a prerequisite criminal procedure, because anyone who comes into the clinic will be learning the criminal process from the back door. When everything else has failed, we go back from conviction and long-term incarceration at the beginning. Co-requisite, we don't even require it. It's a fact pursuit, track them down, hunt them down kind of clinic. So there are risks if you opt for the clinic, in the sense that we don't necessarily guarantee that we're going to always have 5 innocent folks we have, or 4. We work in teams of 2 students in each case. This has been a very, very active year. We've already succeeded in 1 case in getting somebody out who's been for 17 and a half years for a homicide and not committed. So it is exciting. It's a venture. All we're looking for are 8 good men and women who are interested in criminal law, who are interested in writing and justice, and and we do interview for it, and that's essentially what it comprises.
Hi, excuse me, I'm Ursula Bentley. I run the Capital Defender Clinic, and we do legal issues. We're in a way in death penalty cases a few steps before the last gasp. 2 reasons that you might want to consider this clinic. One is if you are, as some of the students who are enrolled in it this year, very committed to the position of being against the death penalty. There are students who are like that and who appreciate the opportunity actually to represent someone who is in a position of either facing a death sentence in New York, because I do have students working at the Legal Aid Society Capital Defense Unit, or more likely representing a defendant who is actually on death row in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, another state. For those clients, what we do is 2 things. One is cert petitions for a writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court. Now, not very many of those are granted. You probably know that already. But the experience of going through a transcript and analyzing constitutional issues and presenting them to the court is, I think, a fabulous experience, and it does buy time for the defendant. The other thing we do is to help habeas counsel. If there's already, the direct appeal is already finished, then we at times do get involved in post-conviction work, where students research issues and to some extent identify areas that the lawyers should work on in the future. Not everyone in the clinic is against the death penalty. Some don't know how they feel about it. Some might even be in favor of it for certain serious killings. The reason those students take the clinic is it is very highly sort of legal research and sophisticated constitutional issues. We track the Supreme Court during the term. I try to take students down to watch an argument. There are usually at least 1 or 2 death penalty arguments scheduled in the Supreme Court. This year was a big year for ineffective assistance of counsel. We happened to have a case that we were doing that very much involved the students in trying to figure out where the Supreme Court was going. So it's constitutional issues. One last thing, I'm running over time. Last thing, there is a possibility that in terms of the habeas work that we do, we might expand to do actual habeas petitions in the Eastern District. Those would not be death penalty cases. New York cases aren't that far along, but they would be regular habeas petitions, which would involve learning, obviously, the law of habeas, which is sophisticated, difficult, but to some of you might be just what you would like to do, a challenge. Okay. It's 5 credits. All the other information is in the district.
Hi, I'm Jane Landry Reyes. I'm a staff attorney at the Elder Law Clinic. Our clinic is probably the place where you can get state court litigation exposure very quickly. It's a fast-paced legal services office. We represent senior citizens over 60 with a variety of civil matters. It is very likely that you will get into court at some point during your tenure in the clinic. It's a one-year, a one-year commitment. We do a lot of motion practice. We do trials. We do administrative hearings before Social Security Administration, before Medicaid. We have a number of interesting issues that cross the gamut into representation of people of all sorts. So the fact that we are an elder law clinic shouldn't make you think that you're only going to learn about issues affecting the elderly. Of course, there are issues that are particular to the elderly. We are involved right now in a guardianship proceeding. We have a case that's going to the Court of Appeals, and we'll be arguing probably sometime over the summer on an issue that's going to have a broad impact for the elderly on a public benefit issue which freezes rent subsidies for the elderly. So it's, again, fast-paced, very exciting, and it's your litigation opportunity, I think. It will give you not only the court exposure, but also the writing. You have to do it probably in a more fast-paced way than you would in a clinic that spends a longer period of time on appellate brief, but that experience is there as well.
I'm Romaine Gardner, Director of the Securities Arbitration Clinic. One of the truly great satisfactions of being a lawyer is being able to give knowing advice to a confused and unhappy client. And if nothing else, I think the students in the Securities Arbitration Clinic get that satisfaction. As you can imagine, thousands of people over the past 2 years have lost millions, sometimes even billions of dollars in the stock market. And some of them have lost rather small amounts, but a large percentage of their savings. And they seek counsel as to whether or not they can get some of it back. And the students in the Securities Arbitration Clinic are able to answer the questions and sometimes even find a way to help them get back some of their losses. Last Tuesday, we interviewed 2 prospective clients. One was a young and very attractive woman who claimed to be a makeup artist for Victoria's Secret. The other was an 89-year-old lady who was recently widowed. I'm not sure we'll be able to help either one of them. Both of them think they were badly advised by their brokers, but the students were listened with a great deal of attention, and I was proud that they were able to advise them on possible strategies, even if we decide not to take their representation. You probably know that virtually all brokerage customers sign arbitration agreements obliging them to bring their claims against the firm and their brokers in arbitration settings or forums of the New York Stock Exchange or the NASD and not in the courts. And students in the Securities Arbitration Clinic not only advise clients as to whether they have a viable claim, but they bring those viable claims against the firm and the broker in these arbitration forums. So far, the clinic's batting average is 1,000. We've made a recovery for every client whose case we've accepted during the past 4 years. Hopefully that batting average will not only bring those students who helped to achieve it a lot of personal satisfaction, but it's our hope it's also going to help them in a trip to the majors.
Hi, I'm Professor Mary Jo Eister, and the program I'm going to be talking about right now is the Consumer Counseling and Bankruptcy Clinic, which is one of our in-house clinics. It's the traditional model for in-house clinics. It's a combination of 3 credits for the clinical portion and 2 credits for the seminar. Students who are accepted in the bankruptcy clinic are asked to have taken or to be taking at the same time the basic course of debtor creditor. If you're interested in, so if you are interested in applying for the bankruptcy clinic, I want to say either in the fall or the spring semester, you should take debtor creditor in the fall. It's probably not offered in the spring. It's usually not offered in the spring. So even if you're thinking ahead to the spring semester, it would be important to take debtor creditor next fall. In the structure of the bankruptcy clinic is to allow students to have quite a lot of exposure to clients, specifically interviewing and also counseling. Each student works in a team with 1 or 2 other students, and each team interviews approximately 10 clients a semester. There could be multiple interviews of a particular client, sometimes 2 or 3 times, in order to really develop a full story, get all the information, and prepare some kind of legal response. We do file bankruptcy petitions on behalf of many of our clients, though not all of them. Sometimes the counseling consists of giving them other options of how to solve their debt problems. Sometimes it's a matter of our writing letters to creditors, instructing them to cease their efforts to collect the debts, and sometimes those letters are effective, so no further action is necessary. The focus here is obviously not litigation. We don't litigate, we don't go into court. If we go into court, that's because something went wrong. So our objective is not to go into court. So if you're interested in learning about the basic skills of interviewing and counseling, and particularly if you have an interest in looking at the consumer area and the bankruptcy area, this would be a good program to consider. I will be conducting interviews, but I don't think I'll have a schedule up because I don't know what my schedule is this time of the year. My students are filing a lot of cases right now, so I don't know when we don't go into court, but we do have very short hearings. They're called 341 meetings or meetings with creditors. The students and I attend those with the client, and those are scheduled usually in the 4 to 6 week time frame, so I have to stay flexible. So if you sign up for the Consumer Counseling and Bankruptcy Clinic as your first choice, you will be contacted by the secretaries to schedule an interview with me sometime between now and the end of the semester.
Good afternoon. My name is Bridget Reagan, and I run the mediation clinic here at BLS. That's not meditation, it's mediation. So what I want to say is this. This clinic is for people that want to become expert problem solvers in a non-litigation context. What mediation is about and what the clinic is about is training law students to act as third-party neutrals to facilitate the resolution of a conflict between 2 or more parties. So in order to become that expert, what the clinic will do is I will provide an in-depth training in mediation, which happens in the fall. It's 25 hours of mediation training, which you must have, that's required by the state court in order to actually hear mediation cases. After the training, you will be placed in one of the community mediation centers or one of the local community courts in New York to actually hear cases. This is not an advocacy role, and some students get confused. You're sort of taking off your lawyering hat and putting on a neutral's hat. So it's more analogous to sort of sitting back, listening to both sides of the issues, of the problem, the various issues that the parties are bringing to the table, and then your role is to structure an agenda to help those people come to a satisfying settlement. And so it's a lot. Training will happen for 5 hours of training. There is a class requirement where you'll get ongoing academic development in these skills. And then there is a commitment of being at your center a minimum of 5 hours a week. There is a writing requirement, final paper, and then there is also a final simulation where you will be doing a mediation and it will be videotaped for the instructor's review. but it's really fun. I look for students who want to connect sort of the mind and this real interest in helping people who may not have access to an attorney solve real hard problems. You got to be able to deal with anger, with intense conflict, and to be very poised and focused. So I welcome your application. I will be here to conduct an information session, and I welcome questions and phone calls. Thank you.
I'm Minna Kotkin. I run the Federal Litigation Refuge. It is a year-long program that runs fall to spring. There's also a summer session that is separate from this application process. It is 12 credits over the course of the year, 6 and 6. 2 credits for the seminar, 4 for the casework. We handle, or the students handle in the role of lawyers in teams of 2, various federal claims, primarily civil rights, although we have done ERISA cases, we do wage and hour cases, some consumer cases, but we are always representing people who cannot afford other counsel. Students we can't guarantee your experience. Students usually only have 1 or 2 cases over the course of the year, but this year I think almost all the students have taken depositions. They've all argued in court. Not a lot, but maybe once or twice. Written briefs, had very significant relationships with at least 1 client. Negotiated against opposing counsel, including lawyers from some of our biggest firms, which is always fun. And in general, it is an intense experience. I'm holding 2 information sessions. I ask that you attend one of them if you want to apply. Because of the sort of kind of experiences, I want to make sure you know what you're getting into and have a chance to talk to students who have done it. And the students from the clinic will be at those sessions. I think that's it.
Hi, I'm David Crow. I'm with Legal Aid Society Criminal Appeals Bureau, located this year right on the corner of 111 Livingston Street. Legal Aid Criminal Appeals represents criminal defendants who have been prosecuted in New York State Court here in the 5 boroughs in non-capital cases and have been convicted of felonies. We get the record on appeal and we file a brief in New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division. Every spring, I take either 3 or 4 students, and each student will work on a pre-screened, pre-selected criminal appeal. You'll be writing the brief, and you'll be doing the oral argument in the case. It's a spring clinic. The timing of the clinic is it's a spring clinic at the beginning. We usually file the brief at the end of the spring semester. The government answers over the summer. Do a reply brief, and usually oral argument is scheduled in the fall. So we take 2nd-year students going into 3rd year, and if you're 3rd year, we'd like you to stay with the case after you graduate. Most BLS students are still within striking distance, and since we get oral argument pre-scheduled, we can come back and do that and continue with the case. The primary work on the case is obviously intensive legal analysis and working on the brief. All of our clients are upstate in New York State prisons. Many of them are close enough that we can drive up and interview them. A few are all the way up at the Canadian border, and it's a little more difficult. But we write them and speak to them on the phone as we get their version of things. Unlike Professors Ellerstein and Megwood, I can't promise you an innocent client. We get the whole range, from the innocent to the not so innocent. But we usually have a couple of legal issues, and we also have a lot of fact analysis based on the direct record. So it's a really good experience. Professor Kaplow talked at the beginning about internships, internal clinics and external. Ours is a bit of a hybrid. These are Legal Aid Society clients, so it's an external clinic in that sense. But because I'm also an adjunct here at the law school and I teach appellate advocacy, I think of it very much as a teaching clinic as well. So we spend as much time working one-on-one on the case as we need to. And then we also meet as a group, usually fairly often at the beginning of the semester, to talk about the specialized law of appellate review that you need to know in order to write the brief effectively. I used to require appellate advocacy as a prerequisite, but over the years I've sort of come to think of the clinic as another way of learning the same set of ideas, this time in practice, which was something that was a more effective way of learning rather than the classic law school method. So if you've already had appellate advocacy, you'll have a bit of a head start on the course. Obviously, basic criminal procedure is also a plus, but if you're willing to put in the work, we can have those as either taken at the same time or even as a substitute. So I don't require an interview, but send me a good writing sample, and I look forward to working. Thank you.
I'm going to be sort of like a sweep up, is that, what do they call it? I don't know. Clean up. Thank you. No, that's how much I watch baseball. But also, just to alert you to what comes after me, Professor Smith is going to talk to you about the prosecutor's clinic as well as the criminal externship, and Professor Eister will talk to you about the judicial and the civil, so don't leave. The other thing I wanted to mention, which I forgot about because it's something new we're doing this year, is during the next week, when we have all of the information sessions, which is sort of the clinic week, students from the clinic, currently enrolled in clinics, will be sitting out in the lobby, available to talk to you about their experiences. Obviously, not every clinic will have somebody there at every point in time, but during lunch, from 1 to 2, or roughly lunch hour, there will usually be a couple of students available to chat with you about their clinical experience. And there's a lot of common ground because we all work across the street, or most of us work across the street in one forum place in our clinic law office, which you'll get a chance to check out when you drop off your applications. So you can get other information that way. Let me just add to what David Crow told you about his clinic, that we also have a prosecutor's analog to David's clinic. The person teaches, I couldn't be here today, but she is having an information session. Deborah Morse, who is a supervising attorney in the Appeals Bureau in the Manhattan DA's office, in the fall offers an opportunity to 3 or 4 students to do an appellate brief on behalf of the people of the state of New York. So as David's students prepare their brief in the spring, to be, as he described it, to be answered by the prosecutors after their brief is filed, if you were working in the Manhattan DA's clinic, that's where you'd enter into the picture. And she prefers, or must have, third-year students, so it may not apply to most of you here, but you can think about it for the future. They do the brief in the fall, and in the spring, or usually it's not even in the spring, it's usually January or early February, they argue the case as well in the appellate division. So in both of these appellate clinics, the culminating project is the actual oral argument, and that hopefully means something to some of you right now since you're going through it, but those are real judges, and they're not so interested in, wow, you're a first-year student. They're just interested in getting the law out and treating you like professionals. Let me just mention my clinic, and then I'm going to turn over to the others. I teach the Safe Harbor Project, which is a clinic that primarily focuses on asylum law. It's a part of a bigger package of immigration law, so we do deal with, either directly or indirectly, lots of general immigration law issues as they arise in our clients' cases. We also occasionally, often discuss or debate issues of immigration policy as they are rapidly unfolding. And I'm sure many of you realize you can barely read the newspapers without some discussion about changes or issues arising out of immigration law. My students basically handle one client during the course of the semester. They are representing an asylum seeker, somebody who is a refugee from a country who has experienced persecution, which is a legal definition, but basically it means they've been treated pretty terribly in their home country on account of their political opinion, their race, their religion, their national origin, or a larger sort of category called social group, which would include women who are victims of female genital mutilation, dissidents in other ways than political, and a whole range of people. We work very closely with people who have experience from other cultures, which allow us to really delve into those kinds of issues about representing people who have life experiences that are different from your own. We deal with the facts of pulling their case together in a way that will persuade a fact finder to grant them asylum. We gather evidence. We prepare a huge amount of documentation. We do a lot of secondary source research. You will know about countries you probably, if I told you their names, you wouldn't even be able to pinpoint them on the map right now. But generally speaking, there's a lot of things going on. Not only is there a lot of client interaction, but there's a lot of learning about experiences that people have had in very, very distant parts of the world. Generally, that culminates then in some form of proceeding, some more formal than others, but many of our students actually have a hearing in immigration court with an adversarial process. Like Professor Gardner, I'm happy to say, although I kind of say it with trepidation, we are also batting 1,000, largely because of the wonderful work that our students do. So if you ever wanted to hang out with somebody from Tibet who walked across the Himalayas in the middle of the winter, this is the place to go. But you also have a lot of research and writing opportunities and a lot of opportunities to really meet people that you might not otherwise have a chance to interact with. I have 2 information sessions on the schedule. I'll be glad to answer more questions at that time. Oh, I'm sorry. Everybody's gone, so oh, she is Judy. Okay. Okay.
I'm Carol Sherwin, I got that right. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Law Center and teach the Children's Law Center Clinic. I actually have the perfect excuse for being late today. 3 students were in court today. All 3 of them appeared on their cases, and we just finished with the last student on her case. So that's what kept me in court late. The Children's Law Center is a not-for-profit law firm. We are assigned by the judges in the family court to represent children. We never represent adults, only children. In custody, visitation, guardianship, domestic violence, and some child protective cases. The staff itself is composed of 14 lawyers, 5 social workers, clerical staff, paralegal, etc. And we are assigned to about 3,000 cases a year by the court. The students in the clinic are assigned to about 2 cases each. They're their cases. They interview the children, the parties, anyone else relevant to the case under my supervision. They prepare the cases, write memos of law, do investigations, and appear in court also under my supervision. Most of the time they have at least 1 court appearance per case. Depending on the case is on, they sometimes will have 2 court appearances per case. The students are also assigned to work with lawyers in the clinic. They also do interviews with the lawyers, help assist the lawyers in preparing their cases. And they also go to court to observe and assist the lawyers in court as well. In most of the cases to which we're assigned, there's a dispute between 2 parents. In most of those cases, the parents have never been married but have a child in common. In over half our cases, there are issues of domestic violence, orders of protection, and in many of the cases, there are child protective issues. There also may be disputes between a parent and a non-parent, relative or a relative and a relative. We have seminars on Monday nights from 6 to 7:30. For the fall, there's 4 credits. You give 12 hours a week. We are pretty much open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and we're open on weekends. So we are very flexible as to when you want to give us your hours. And it really, as long as we know that these are your hours, that's really fine with us. Yes, we still have space for the summer, and that's 3 credits, as I think you know, in 24 hours. But we will follow the same thing, the Monday seminar, and each student will get cases. And also, we certainly have openings for the fall, and we really love having the students. The students help us tremendously, and we hope that they have a good experience with them. They do. They also will see a very, very active legal service office. You come to us any evening between 4 and 8, which is when we do most of our interviews. interviewing. The office is packed. There are usually at least 30 people there with their children waiting to be interviewed. So we hope they'll apply.
Hi, I'm Professor Smith. I'm going to talk about 3 or actually 4 prosecution options on the criminal law side. We heard about a variety of defense options from Professor Benjamin Crow and Hellerstein. So just quickly on the prosecution side, Professor Kaplow just talked about Professor Morse's appellate clinic through the Manhattan DA's office. The next option, which is in-house, is a state prosecutor's clinic. I teach that clinic. It is open only to 3rd years. It is a 1-year clinic. Those students are allowed by appellate division order to act as actual first-year assistant district attorneys in the Brooklyn Criminal Court. You will go to court on at least once a week and sometimes more. You handle cases involving sexual assault, child abuse, domestic violence, guns, drugs, whatever we happen to be doing. And you will handle that case sometimes actually from the arraignment, which is the bail stage, all the way through the disposition. That involves interviewing witnesses, negotiating pleas, etc. The disposition could either be plea or trial, and you will do the trial if the case goes to trial. So that's the state prosecutor's clinic. I have a 2nd session coming up next week on that clinic, and there's a sign-up sheet that will be posted across the street, and I do interview for that particular clinic. Now, the next option on the prosecution side is a federal prosecutor's clinic. That's sort of a hybrid clinic. It is supervised by 2 assistant U.S. attorneys, and those students work on federal misdemeanor cases under those assistant U.S. attorney supervision. You will go to court, the U.S. court, in those cases. Those are federal misdemeanors. They are usually low-level drug cases and trespass cases and sometimes assault and sometimes the VA hospitals, the parks, etc. And you will handle that case from the beginning through the trial under the supervision of the assistant U.S. attorneys. And they will also interview for that clinic, and there will be a sign posted for that clinic additionally outside the clinic office. Now, moving to the 4th option, which brings me to the criminal practice internship. That's an extern clinic. Now, I'm going to talk about that, and Professor Eister is going to talk about the judicial and civil externships. Now, the externships differ a little bit because, as I just said about the federal and state prosecutors' clinics, there you are the assistant district attorney or the assistant U.S. attorney. Now, the externship, you sign up for that clinic and you tell me what you would like to do. Do you want to work on the prosecution side or the defense side? Do you want to do federal? Do you want to do state? And there I assign you to an assistant district attorney or an assistant U.S. attorney, or for the defense side, to a legal aid attorney. Okay, and sometimes in their juvenile rights division, could be in their appellate division, but there you're assigned to an attorney. Now, that clinic is open to 2nd and 3rd year students, and in that clinic, you are required to work between 12 and 14 hours a week, so it comes to 168 hours for the semester, and you go out and you work in their offices, and you work with them. If they want you to do research, you'll go to court with them, you might interview witnesses with the lawyers. So when you fill out that application, you have to be very specific about what you would like to do. So in that clinic, you can also go and work on the defense side or the prosecution side, just in sort of a different mode. That clinic, you'll see from the application, also has placements in a large variety of criminal justice system agencies. The NYPD, Safe Horizons, which is formerly the Victim Services Agency, at the Mayor's Criminal Justice Coordinator's Office. They have some placements in the Center for Court Innovation, which deals with a lot of innovations in the criminal courts. So you can sign up also for policy type roles in the criminal justice system. And by the way, the federal prosecutors clinic is open to 2nd and 3rd year students. Okay.
Last but not least. Is everybody still paying attention? Is anybody still paying attention? All right, here's where I'm going to start, this canary yellow. There weren't any tables back there. If you have any interest in applying to or knowing the application procedures for the civil practice internship, pick up a piece of this yellow paper. It is now, or will soon be, on the website. I think it is now. But there it is in hard copy if you need it. I'm going to talk first about the judicial externship program. And I'm also then going to talk briefly about civil. I am having an information meeting on Thursday, next Thursday, 1 o'clock, a week from today, room 603, 1 to 2. I would urge you to come to that, particularly if you have questions about how the civil practice application process is going to work now, because we've just changed it, and it is different from everything else. For example, you'll see on the application form that you don't actually list that as one of your choices. It's there, but just with information. So let me talk first about the judicial externship program, which is somewhat similar to the criminal externship program in terms of the application process, but there are some distinctions. For the judicial internships, you apply through the clinic office to clerk in a judge's chambers. Usually you'll be working with the judge's law clerk or with the judge himself or herself, and it's a one-semester commitment. Depending on the kind of work you think you're interested in, there are opportunities to designate whether you're interested primarily in civil practice or criminal practice, or family laws, certain specialty areas, bankruptcy law. Some courts in the state system, for example, the civil and the criminal are not handled in the same court. So a particular judge in the state court system usually handles either an entirely civil docket or an entirely criminal docket. And in fact, it's even more specialized. There are matrimonial judges who handle only a matrimonial docket. And then there are the family courts, the housing courts. So it's very specialized. In the federal system, at the district court level, it's mixed. District court judges handle criminal as well as civil cases, and they also could get they could serve as appellate judges for bankruptcy cases. So the federal docket is mixed, and usually you're going to get a mix of civil and criminal there. And of course, the bankruptcy courts are separate, so that would be simply handling bankruptcy cases. Now, when you apply for the judicial clerkship clinic, there are a couple of things you need to take into account that are different from the other clinical process, from the other external clinical process. Once you are referred by us, by the clinic office, to apply for a judge for a clerkship, and you go for an interview, you must accept the position if it is offered. So if I refer you to Judge Smith, and you schedule an interview with Judge Smith, and you go and interview, and Judge Smith offers you an internship, you must accept. Most of the time, we refer you to one judge at a time, but there are some judges who want to see a lot of resumes. And even though I know they're really likely to select only one student, one intern, so I might send 4 judges 4 resumes, but I will send the same 4 resumes to all 4 judges, so that it maximizes your, this is very complicated, but just, I'm sorry, but it's just because I'm going to say, usually you're being sent to one judge at a time, but there are some times when I have to send a student to several judges at the same time. So if that's the case, if you've been sent by our office to 2 or 3 judges and you've interviewed with each one of them, then the rule still applies. It's just whichever one offers you the internship first. But you are not free, when you interview with a judge, you are not free to then say, gee, you know, I'm going to have to think about this. I don't know if maybe I can find something that's more interesting. Normally you have the right, when you go to an interview, to determine whether or not you want to take the position. But with the judicial clinic, at least for those that we refer you to, you must accept the position if it's offered. It's a 4-credit clinic, 3 credits for the field work and 1 credit for the seminar. The seminar is held on Monday nights. That's changed, not changed. As far as we know, Monday evenings, 6 to 7:30. Anyhow, Monday evenings, the seminar meets once a week. The federal judges in particular are very selective, and we do review your transcripts and make referrals based in part, not solely, but in part on GPAs, because the judges require it. They expect to see your transcript, and they will look at grades and making the selections. State court judges are also selective, but not as selective as the federal bench. One of the advantages of a state court internship is you actually get more interaction with the judge, usually. Most state court judges spend a lot of time with their student law clerks. They're very appreciative of having you there, and they usually spend a fair amount of time each time you're there talking about their processes and decision-making and so forth. I'm going to shift now to talking about the civil practice internship. And here's the difference. Here's what's starting now. We will not be making referrals anymore for the civil practice internship. It will be a self-application process. We are posting on the website. It's not all there yet, but we'll soon be there. Hopefully by Monday, a lot of this information will be on the Brooklyn Law School webpage. The names and addresses and contact people for each office which is already approved for an internship. There are approximately, well, over 100 offices, we think. I mean, I haven't counted them. But my teaching assistant tells me she sent out 120-some letters asking them to supply us with information. So we have a lot of offices that are already approved for internships. When you get that information, you are free to send out 1 or 120 applications. It's entirely up to you, but you'll be sending your application materials directly to the office. This information on the website is going to be password protected, so every student in Brooklyn Law School has a username and password that you use to access different kinds of information already. You're using that same password to access this information. I've asked all of the offices on my list to supply us with basic information. I sent them a 2.5 to 3-page questionnaire. And once we get that back and it's in electronic form, when you click on that office link, you will get the backup information. So you can get more information about the kind of work, the number of people on staff, how interns are supervised, and importantly, when they prefer to receive applications for each semester, because that does vary. So you could plan accordingly and send your applications to the offices at the point where it's most likely to be beneficial to you. Once you've secured an internship with a particular office, there's a form you have to fill out and provide to me, which is a request for approval form. If it's one of the offices that's pre-approved, you can skip, it tells you can skip several of the sections because I already know what the office does, I've already screened it. If it's an office that you found on your own or through EmployerNet or with assistance in the Career Center, and it's not on my approved list, you have to submit a request for approval form, which is complete, 2 pages, I think. And I will need to contact the office and review the process with the supervisor there, the attorney supervisor to work before I'll approve it. I'm not going to go into any more detail about this procedure, but this is why I urge you to come to the meeting, and if you're interested in pick up one of these information sheets so that you'll understand how the procedure works, because this will continue from now on. Did I forget anything? All right. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, before people start really making a lot of noise leaving, are there any, you can leave, just quietly, are there any questions that people would have of what I've kind of described, a general nature about applying requirements, credits for